Ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome to the BlockCrunch podcast, the go-to podcast for investors and builders in crypto. This episode is also brought to you by PARASWAP. Stick around to learn more. This episode is also sponsored by the HBAR Foundation. This episode is also brought to you by notional.finance. I like to use notional.finance to get transparent, fixed-rate borrowing and lending on Ethereum. The upgraded and easy-to-use V2 with token and liquidity mining is also live now at notional.finance/blockcrunch. So stick around to learn more. Hey everybody, well, this is one of my most anticipated episodes this year because my next guest is part of one of the biggest metal acts in the world. He has his music streamed by over 6 million people every single month on Spotify alone and achieved gold and platinum status in his last 3 studio albums and also earned a Grammy nomination for one of my favorite songs, The Stage. So today, I'm beyond excited to have Synyster Gates, lead guitarist of my favorite band, Avenged Sevenfold, on the show to discuss this new NFT they launched for their fan club, the Deathbat Club. So, Syn, welcome to the show.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff right there. Hell of an opener. Thank you for that wonderful and warm intro. I really appreciate it. Thanks for reaching out to me, and it's a real honor to be here. Can't wait to talk about the excitement of the future.
Definitely. Now, to many, the worlds of metal and NFTs, they don't often cross. And so I'd love to kind of start by just understanding how you stumbled into this world, because I think from your public profile, it seems like you actually started collecting NFTs way before a lot of people on Twitter did. I think back in like July, and now you have like 300.
which is funny because it's the fastest moving space I've ever been involved in. So July seems like an eternity ago. It's incredible how fast it moves. But yeah, I'm not here to pose and posture as this guy that's since NFT inception was rah. It took me a second, and it took me a second as an avid investor in crypto, a huge believer in Web3. It's just one of those things. I just want to be honest because I'm seeing a lot of that in the space right now, where people just kind of look at it as this right click save or whatever it is, JPEG icon sort of thing, and it just couldn't be further from the truth. And once I really understood that NFTs is almost like everything, it's kind of the key to Web3. Just like there's different layers of the internet. Just the internet isn't just the internet. There's so many layers. The human layer on the NFT is a very essential layer to the blockchain and to Web 3.0. And so once I got that, which is about July, it really connected and resonated with me, and I've been going since. So the short version of how I got into it was my brother-in-law, who happens to be my lead singer. We've been investing in crypto same amount of time, since about 2016, probably the latter half of 2016. He started getting into, becoming obsessed with CryptoPunks and what the whole thing was about. I could feel the energy and the swell, the ground movement underneath this thing. And he's like, it's probably just a JPEG. I don't know, but I'm going to be involved in it. And I gotta collect. I gotta see what's going on. And with young kids and different things like that, I just wouldn't make time for it. So in July, it was my birthday, my 40th birthday. The day after is his son, my godson's birthday. And I was hungover at Dave & Buster's, one of these local arcade places in the States. And I grabbed a beer, and he goes off on this 30-minute soliloquy on how these things are amazing. You got to get one yet. And I took a look. I'm like, okay, fine. Oh my God, they have a bald green clown hair kind of guy with an eye patch. I want that. It's probably expensive, right? Is it gonna be like 10 grand or how much? Well, you have expensive taste, Brian. That's gonna be 60 grand. That's 22 ETH or whatever it was at the time. 26 ETH. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Fuck it. I'm gonna do it. And the very next day is when I discovered utility with Bored Apes and all these different things. And funny enough, we had already released an NFT. I already knew about them, and my stupid contribution was I really wanted to put, music to it. Matt and I both agreed. He had a more longer view of what NFTs were, and this to him was more of fan adoption because it was going to take a while for fans to get wallets, do all these different things. Um, but I was like, well, it's got to have music, otherwise it's just a picture or whatever. And fine, it's not really how the NFT space works. It's like generated by the hexadecimal hash of Ethereum blockchain address and all these different things. It was like, and I was like, okay, let's try it. So anyway, once I got into collecting, Bored Apes changed my mind completely. I was like, this is essentially a receipt on the blockchain of your purchase and your agreement with whatever project you're involved with and what they're promising you in the form of utility, such as amazing meet and greets or concerts. We were in New York City for NYC NFT or NFT NYC. That's debated on
Yeah, yeah.
how that's called. But Ape Fest was a week long, and they had such amazing experiences and stuff, and they've been so influential in a band like yours. And I said I'd make it a long story short, but the last thing in closing was that bands like us, it's such a no-brainer to participate because the utility is completely baked in. We have everything to offer for these NFT projects. Whereas Bored Ape, kudos to those guys. They invented a lot of that amazing shit out of thin air and created this wonderful roadmap and had such clairvoyance of where the space was going to go. And they're just incredible leaders. Gary Vaynerchuk and VFriends, another one too. So it really resonated with us, the utilitarian part of the whole thing.
It's funny you talk about music and NFTs because one of your favorite bands of all time is obviously Mr. Bungle, and they issued their own NFTs, I think 4 months ago, and auctioned it off on Super Rare. I'm not going to spoil what it is, but I noticed that the owners of the NFTs have the name Shadows and also Sinister. So I assume that those are you guys. So you guys bought all four of them. So what
That's
what is
us,
that
yeah.
about? And did you buy them? And what was that about? And what was it that excited you about these NFTs?
Yeah, well, when I saw these things, anything Bungle I'd buy, even if it was just JPEGs, which a lot of bands are making the mistake of releasing just JPEGs, nothing attached to it. It's one piece of art. There's nothing rare, and there's certainly no utility. I think people are starting to kind of figure that out now. But this was incredible as a huge fan of their music, and especially uh, I'm bewildered by how they went from um, their first record to their sophomore release, which is Disco Volante. I mean, it's just one of the most epic soundtracks I've ever heard in my entire life, and it's mind blowing. I hated it for the first 2 weeks, and those are usually my favorite records. And so these are kind of the outtakes from that, which I never even fathomed that they were kind of improvising, or it just seemed so beautiful and so beautifully composed, um, such intent, such purpose to it that when I found out that they were jamming and going crazy in this kind of avant-garde, postmodern-ish kind of fashion, I mean, it blew my mind, and I just had to get a hold of them. And Shadows has been, um, a few years now. He's been a pretty big fan of Bungle, so we kind of Venn diagram in kind of the weird avant-garde shit, and then with rock and roll and metal, kind of like go our separate ways and stuff. But we're starting to really Venn diagram in some of those unique spots. So I mean, I was just like, these things are going to sell out right away. I mean, avid Bungle. But the thing is, like, we're so far away from mass adoption that nobody knew what the fucking NFT was. And Chris Dixon released a funny thing this morning. It's like people the first stage is you're ignored, second stage is they laugh at you, and third stage we're here, or they fight with you. And I think we were kind of right in the middle of that, where people are starting to kind of get pissed off at NFTs and environmental issues and over energy consumption and stuff like that, which is rightfully so. I think there's a path to all that. We can talk about that later. But yeah, nobody bid on these things. We were the only ones to do it. So we bought it in a landslide. And they were smart to do it as 2 ETH, because it could have been, we release these later on down the line or do something else with them, or we're going to make 2 ETH that we probably shouldn't make a piece on these things because our demographic is either anti this or has no clue about this new NFT movement.
Yeah, that's actually a segue to another discussion that I definitely want to get to, which is this overlap between metal and NFT and this wider discussion about different genres and how they embrace tech. And we're going to get to that. But I think this is a great segue to talk about Deathbat's Club because obviously you guys just released these new NFTs that are much more than just art pieces. So if I'm not mistaken, I think there's 10,000 pieces of these and fans can do a lot of stuff with these things. And you guys were very clear that these are not just JPEGs, right? These are not just pieces of art to post on like Twitter profile pictures, but there's going to be a lot of utility to them. So can you kind of, help us understand what are some of the things that maybe fans can expect to do with these NFTs?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would implore our audiences to think of these as super cute receipts, immutably guaranteed by the amazing blockchain. So basically, the utility is any. I mean, you can just take a look at a band and say, hey, what do you want? What would you want access to? And it's really just it's no brainer stuff. It's meet and greets. It's essentially our time, free tickets, merch, exclusive things, exclusive hangs. A lot of our younger demographic, we've been very fortunate that we have the fans that age with us, older fans, older diehard metal fans, and young gamers and digital natives, and now Web3 natives and stuff. And so we've been very very lucky to have a really diverse following as far as age groups and stuff are concerned. Um, so so what does that mean? It means if you just want early access to the record and you want to keep it simple, you got that. But what excites us, what we see the kids getting into is like the metaverse and stuff like that. So we have a bunch of land, like premium land in Sandbox. We're building out just an amazing virtual world there, and we want to have these virtual hangs with everybody. We want to have a digital marketplace where you own whatever types of things you create in our world, whatever types of things we have for sale. It's literally just a world full of non-fungible shit that mirrors our world, that mirrors, even the universe. There's more non-fungible particles in the universe and ions and stuff like that than there is fungible. And so there's a reason for all that. Those types of things resonate with us, and money is kind of a like a configured sort of system to have stuff, but most stuff around that really resonates and connects with us more spiritually is non-fungible. And so it makes sense that you should have a marketplace of those things and you should own those things. People really value ownership. And I think once that curtain or veil has been lifted from, hey, we are fucking renting everything, our network, our profiles, our handles, in-game app purchases, guns, skins. It's all rented. I mean, once that red pill hits your fucking stomach, it starts coursing through your veins. Like you're just like, oh my god, this is the world I want to be a part of. This is not only the world that I want to be a part of, but it's also the world that I want to usher our fans into. So to create real, meaningful value, high value for our fans, and that's essentially why we're doing this. This is just we've been really careful to not say that this is something fans can or should monetize, but it is very important to me as these things go on that you understand that this is real value. I mean, we have kids all the time, I want a cleaner Deathbat, I want a cleaner we tell them, hey, you're in the club, don't buy another one, save your money. We're not looking for a cash grab. It has nothing to do with this. This is a liquidity pool that you're buying into. We want a diverse group of people that can come in and enjoy all this utility that we're providing. We don't want you to collect 20 debt bats to pad our pockets. We just want you involved so you can kind of understand and educate yourself on Web3 and all the amazing value that you can accrue by participating in the space.
Absolutely. And I think on that note, I think you mentioned in one of your older interviews that, the lifeblood of a lot of, metal bands, rock bands, it really comes from touring because, a lot of the bands in this genre haven't really, the fan base hasn't really fully adopted like streaming to the extent that, say, rap fans or EDM fans have. So I'm curious, how much of this embracing of NFTs and Web3 was ushered in by what's been going on in the past 2 years, right? Where a lot of bands couldn't tour, they couldn't really go anywhere, and a lot of bands started, exploring the metaverse and how to move their fan base into the digital realm. How much of that thinking was influenced by what happened?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think there's it's a multifaceted sort of answer. There's no doubt in my mind that the pandemic and isolation ushered in a digital age, and as we participated in stuff, I think the bright people out there, the brightest people out there, and the most philanthropic in a sense, quickly realized that we were renting in this digital world, and why do we all have to rent? And why don't we use like these tokenized DAOs that essentially the greatest companies do anyway, with beta testing and all this stuff, which is composability, where you have your devs build this world and then you release it to the public to really figure out the holes, the fixes, and even more importantly, the innovation of your game. Except there aren't rewards for that, except being involved first. Maybe you get a little care package or something like that, but you should be granted voting rights for those types of contributions. It's not. I read a cool thing. I forget by who. I'm sorry. I'd love to credit them, but it's not ownership for community as such or users. It's community for contributors. You go contribute, and you should be provided high value. You should be able to vote on things, and it's up to people before it turns into a full DAO, maybe a mini DAO, to guarantee that token holders are a diverse collection of benevolent actors. And once they've kind of figured that out and there's a proof of concept, then they should give them the keys to the kingdom and at least see what happens there. And to me, there's certain aspects where it doesn't work. I say that, but I'll call myself out first. I'm not willing to do that for music. So I don't see us in the very near future crowdsourcing our music in essence. So we might remain a mini DAO for a long time and have centralized aspects of a whole Web3 sort of world view for us. My defense to that is there is a lot of centralized aspects to every single portion of Web3 right now. It just depends on what parts are centralized and what parts are decentralized. That is super important. But I think certainly for games and I mean my dude Shadows and myself, I'm super obsessed with DAOs right now. He's got a lot on his plate with certain things, so we try to split up work between all members of the band and different things. And my focus right now is on blending a lot of the best parts of Web 2 and DAO philosophy and tokenizing our holders and figuring out what we can accomplish that way. But that's what's super important. And to circle back, I think that's what our forefathers of this Web3 movement saw coming down the pipe sooner than later when this pandemic hit.
That makes a lot of sense. And speaking of kind of creating DAOs, I was hanging out in the Sinner website, which to listeners is your online guitar community. I don't know how else you would describe it, but it seems like there's a lot of pre-DAO elements there already. There's a ton of user-generated content, a lot of engagement in the forums. Have you thought about turning Sinner into an actual kind of tokenized DAO before?
100%. And that's usually where I iterate. I try to, sorry, sinners, but that's where I try to do the fast iteration of different things make fail forward and faster with Sinner. But yeah, I hate to toot my own horn or whatever, but I am proud of I have this original art piece that I did, and it's a pyramid. Our whole thing is a pyramid scheme. But I try to educate that pyramid schemes by good actors are incredibly important, because what is a pyramid scheme? That's allowing your users, trusting your community, your family to create content, allowing them to create content. Web3, obviously, that transitions into voting rights, to where you can provide a list of things or allow them to provide a list of accomplishments, new builds, new iterations for the site, and vote on the ones that they want to have first. And I'd have to relinquish control. And I'm completely down to do that. We are pivoting into Web3, and hopefully that works there. And then we'll take this whole app package um, and repurpose it for Avenged Sevenfold, and hopefully democratize it and white label it for other influencers, bands, celebrities, who are companies that want the ultimate community package with a Web3 marketplace. We're going to be selling digital products as NFTs you can hold in your wallet. You will be able to own these things, such as modeled guitar pedals, amps, any sort of digital musical products. That applies to me, and it's your job to figure out what digital products apply to you. And there will be, a complete Web3 based modeled marketplace for people to own these things, take them in the metaverse and collaborate musically. In Sandbox, we might have a studio where you can come in and plug in your distortion pedal into that thing and collaborate and make music with us, with your contemporaries, with other Deathbats Club family members, or even just Avenged Sevenfold family members. I mean, we want to include everybody. This is just trying to accrue some sort of education and adoption to bring everybody here. But the short answer to your question is 100%. We will be pivoting into Web3 and taking the best parts of Web2 with us. Again, we just released our live streaming thing, and you would think is a live streaming thing for me, and I'm sure that's what a lot of my members would want. But literally, the best thing that I've found is that beginners are much more adept at teaching other beginners, because they have these eureka moments that are fresh in their brain. And so you curate, you find these star beginner students, and you say, you are crushing it. You found tools on YouTube to slow down, not only the notes, but where my fingers are at, how I'm bending stuff, how I'm playing these things, not just what is being played, but how it's being played, and teaching other people from like beginners to all the way to advanced. And so the live stream stuff is being populated by all different levels of playing, from beginner to advanced. It's much more programmed. It's much more of a community programming than it is me. And yes, I'll be there. I know people want me there. I've created this thing with my dad as well. Amazing musician. He's played from everybody from Tower of Power to Frank Zappa. I mean, just an incredible career as a musician. But it is very much, it's always been since day one, and we've been working on this for 10 years. It's very much aligned with this Web3 ethos of empowering and emboldening your community at any cost. And I'm very proud to have had that philosophy since day one. And now we have this underlying technology and blockchain to bring it to fruition, to realize the philosophy.
Now, before I continue, I'd love to share one of my favorite products in crypto with you. Now, whenever I want to trade a token, instead of going to Uniswap, SushiSwap, Bancor one by one to see where I can find the best quote, I just go to PARASWAP to scan for the best price anywhere, because PARASWAP aggregates all the popular Ethereum dexes and saves me a ton of time and headache in finding where I can trade something for the best price, and lets me trade in one place. Now, the cool thing is they've also integrated with Ledger Live as well, meaning I can now swap at the best prices directly from my Ledger wallet. So seriously, if you're a DeFi trader and you're worried about the security risks of centralized exchanges, but you also don't want to scour dozens of dexes just to find the best price, you have to check out PARASWAP. So head on over to paraswap.io/blockcrunch. I'd also love to take a moment to talk about the HBAR Foundation. Now, if you approached me 1 to 2 years ago, I would tell you I'm really skeptical of layer 1 systems outside of Ethereum. But in the past 12 months, I started to notice billions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of users flocking to new blockchains left and right. And then I realized there's an actual market gap being filled. And I always love to support projects who support builders. And one of those projects is Hedera Hashgraph. Hedera is an enterprise-grade public network with its own crypto asset called HBAR. And the HBAR Foundation has launched with an initial budget of over $2 billion to provide entrepreneurs with the funding and ecosystem support needed to quickly build and deploy new applications on the Hedera Hashgraph network. The HBAR Foundation is eager to find builders in DeFi, NFTs, gaming, sustainability, and all sectors. So if you are a builder, a developer, or a creator with an idea, visit hbarfoundation.org to learn more. I'd love to talk a little bit about Notional. If you followed the show for long enough, you know I'm pretty excited about fixed rate products. Notional Finance is the leading fixed rate borrowing and lending protocol, and they've just released a major upgrade. With Notional, you can not only borrow and lend at fixed rates for up to 1 year now, but liquidity providers also have a pretty good opportunity. Thanks to an integration with Compound and a liquidity mining program, LPs can actually earn interest, liquidity fees, and token liquidity mining incentives as well. We've talked with Teddy from Notional recently, and as a happy investor as well, I've been pretty impressed with how the team is building this critical infrastructure that will help onboard the next billion users to DeFi. So you can check it out today at notional.finance/blockcrunch. Yeah, that's what I think is so cool because obviously with this NFT hype, I think a lot of, artists and bands are trying to capitalize on this thing. But having been a fan and following you guys for a long time, I know that this is something that you guys embodied from day one, kind of starting this digital community, especially with Sinner. So this is something that's super interesting. And I think that brings me to another question that I brought up earlier, which is, speaking about bands and technology, I always found it interesting that genres like EDM, rap, pop, they embraced tech and streaming really early on. I think there was a huge rap concert in like Fortnite, right, in the proto metaverse. But to
Yeah,
me, rock and
Marshmallow did,
metal,
I think, the first virtual one, and it was insane. It broke the fucking internet.
yeah, it did. And but what's interesting to me is that rock and metal, my favorite genre, is always a little bit lagging in terms of embracing tech, and you guys have always been the kind of clear exception here, right? You had the balls to write an album about AI. You create your own online school. You create your own game. So, but do you think that as a metal band, there's almost an additional barrier to convince your fan base to be more open to like the internet culture, to things like crypto, NFTs, streaming, and so on?
100%, 100%. We are traditional metal fans. I mean, I think that we transcend, a metal fan base. Fortunately, we're very fortunate, but a lot of metal bands don't have that luxury, and some even perpetuate that same elitist mentality. And I mean, since since I was a kid, I've always been a futurist. I wanted, all my idols were playing, Les Pauls and Strats, and I bought a Parker Fly. I don't expect anybody to know what the fuck that thing is, but it's like made of fiberglass, and I was playing all these rock concerts and hardcore shows, and I mean, I got made fun of so much for, and I saw some dude playing with it, an amazing guitar player, in a Mariah Carey video, like 1995, playing it. I'm like, that's what I want to do. That's an amazing guitar. It's got the piezo system, sounds like an acoustic. It's got this crazy thing that tunes. Amazing piece of technology for a floating bridge, and I won't bore your audience anymore with that. But I've always been um, uh, very very hypnotized in a way by things that I've never seen before, and that's just kind of a natural thing for me. And so I've never been one to try to pull off any hippo, uh, hippocratic any hypocrisies, any endeavors
Mhm.
of hypocrisy, to where it's a do what I say, not as I do sort of thing. But it's a tough life to lead, building all the time. I just posted something on my Twitter last night about failing forward. And it's a most people probably haven't heard that term unless you're in the space, and then it's probably the most cliched term of all time. But it's 100% that it's it's an adventure. It's a path. It's a process, and there's never an end game, and you're constantly struggling, and then you're constantly pivoting. And that's my biggest thing. It's hard. I probably should have gone out and begged, borrowed, and stole for a big amount of capital to kind of expedite the process of growth, because you're constantly feeling behind the eight ball. And I know even people with billions of dollars backing their companies feel at times behind the eight ball. I get that, but it's a tough life to lead. You need supportive family members and all these different things, but we wouldn't have it any other way. We have thick skin for it. We're amazingly fortunate to have a wonderful audience. A lot of them are now onboarded, got their wallets, got their Deathbat Club, Deathbats Club NFTs, are excited about the future, and get it now that they're participating, and they trust their favorite band. They know us. They know that we're not going to ruin our reputation, our 20+ year reputation. We've been friends since fucking 10 years old. My singer and I are married to twin sisters that we've known since we're 10 years old. I mean, this is such a familial group. We would, it's silly to think that we would ruin our reputation for, I mean, I don't know what, I'll be perfectly transparent. What is it's like a $2 million, would be a $2 million cash grab if you take the NFT mints and run. Um, and that's just not, it's not life changing money split fucking 6, 7 different ways. It's just, but it's the best way to create a small little liquidity pool that we can use to fund events, to help fund our metaverse endeavors, and to create this amazing utility for a fan base. And so, um, it's a crazy process, but there's nothing more exciting than feeling like you're first. And this, I think, for the first time, we feel like we're first in a space, and the space being probably one of the most meaningful things we could ever be a part of, and that's bringing ownership back to our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I kind of watch the evolution of NFTs in music, I'm always a little bit worried that part of the culture would be left behind, where you have this rock and metal genre that is very nostalgic, kind of very looking back to some of the legends in the past, people like Slayer and Metallica. Maybe potentially left behind in this Web3 transition, as we see like rappers and EDM artists just completely embracing Web3 from day one. So it's really awesome to see what you guys are doing to kind of be the
Thank you.
pioneer here. And speaking of pioneering, I'm curious whether you've seen kind of other artists do cool things that you're interested in, if from an NFT perspective, because one of the things I noticed recently was I think Duran Duran is using AI to create their own NFTs. And then Blau, this EDM artist, is
Yeah,
created his NFT where he gives away like 50% of his streaming rights to fans. So the
yeah.
fans who own the NFTs like earn whatever royalties he earns. Or I'm curious, like, are there like similar use cases you've seen from other bands or other artists that you're interested in as well?
Yeah, there's a lot of popular artists doing stuff. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you exactly who, but I can speak about the focus to bringing investment and royalty sharing with your communities. I think that's absolutely huge. With this style of vertical, you can take a Patreon sort of thing, but with blockchain immutability, and receipts, and create much more utility and amazing airdrops and different things. Um, so that is essentially a capital raise. You're raising capital from your tribe, your family, and in return, they're getting residuals from this. So instead of giving it to major labels or publishing or different things like that, the fan base is making money. And this is all for, this is going to benefit us, sure, but I think in ratio, it's going to benefit smaller artists a lot more, because with maybe just 50 people, a 50-person fan base, you can raise good capital with, technology these days to get into, a decent studio and plug in. Maybe you don't have all the most expensive mics, but with the help of some of this digital equipment, good sample, um, um, music libraries and certain things, like make a really killer sounding record. I mean, our demos these days sound fucking unbelievable because of the amp modeling, the electric drum sample libraries, all this sounds amazing. Strings, you can do anything. And then the vertical includes these different companies. Again, I should have these, and I'll send you some links to put in to check out. So I have some I'm following right now, um, where they completely keep track of your streaming on blockchain, and have reasonable take rates. That's another part of Web two that is so dysfunctional, is the take rates. I mean, for Facebook and Twitter, and Twitter's, well, we're kind of arguing with Jack right now. Everybody's retweeting his tweets, and he's got a recent one about VC ownership in Web3, and it's just another way to, anyway. So, but there's a lot of things that I think he's doing, and he's at least um, perpetuating some sort of participation, NFTs, metaverse, or whatever. And I love that he has his outlook, and we can all disagree. If I get kicked off of Twitter, I'm going to be pretty pissed, and that's going to be another reason to keep fighting. Um, but anyway, that's 100% take rates. And Apple, the most benevolent, that's a 30% take rate. I mean, that's
Wow.
monopolistic, or duopolistic. It's not healthy. And so when you have all these companies that are going to compete with each other to provide, just baked into the smart contract, which anybody can read at any time. Anybody can, maybe some of these will be DAOs, and you can compose upon these and create different things off of a initial architecture here. Your streams will be counted, and you'll be paid according to what the smart track contract take rate is. And so there's no need for faulty, spending, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars in auditing just to sift through this weird web of horrifying accounting. It's an impossible task to audit a lot of these companies. Not all of them, but certainly a lot of them. Bands have had tons of trouble. They'll perform these $50,000 to $100,000 audits, and
Jesus.
it might only yield 500K or something like that. And that seems like a lot of money, but it's a lot. There's a lot more on the table somewhere hidden, and 500K distributed between all these different people is so it's super costly. It's not efficient. It takes up years of your life, and nobody wants to be tied up in litigation for years. It's just, what a fucking detriment to your fucking soul and well-being. So having the transparency is super important. To have the vertical, where your fans, your family raise capital, you build a beautiful compendium of musical songs or musical parts, or however you want to conceive of what an album or making music is these days. Then you have this vertical that keeps perfect track with very benevolent low take rates, and you redistribute the wealth back to your fans, your original investors, your tribe, your community. I mean, I get goosebumps every time I go through that. I just don't see what the fuck the problem is here. Why are we fighting against that?
Yeah, that's awesome. And it sounds like besides using NFTs as a tool to engage fans, to give perks, to give, hangouts and airdrops, there's also this whole potential of using NFT to completely disrupt the studio, the record label model. Is that something that you're confident that will happen, or do you feel like these record labels are so powerful that it might not even happen?
You want to know? That's a great question. I wish I could say for sure I'm insanely bullish, but I mean, this is our time to make it our own. And right now, the ethos, the credo behind all of this is bringing back the money to not only the artist or creator, but their community. And so everybody building right now is building with that philosophy in mind. But there's been some alarming things, like the couple of big time gaming companies that have made these major NFT based announcements, transitional announcements in the transition, and had so much blowback that they're like, okay, fine, you can continue, renting, your upgrades and your skins and in-game app purchases and stuff like that. And
That
I
was
mean,
Stalker, right?
what's that?
That was the Stalker game, right?
Completely. Yeah. 100%. And Matt's more of a gamer than me. I heard of that one, but I guess there's three major ones now.
Mm.
It's the beginning of my deep dive into that, because now, to be honest, we're starting to see more issues, more reticence, more resilience from the naysayers out there. And so, I mean, when you have that kind of divide and polarization, and people caring so much to fight against this, I think that's when you can see some of the bad actors, or even just not bad people, but the shitty model starting to kind
Mm.
of infiltrate its way and take over the blockchain, take a bunch of fucking people with them, and then now it's just centralization on top of the blockchain, right? And um, you're already seeing kind of the hijacking of certain terms like meta and all these things. Facebook's cover of Time magazine is big fan of a certain portion politically, and
Mm.
you have them cancel delete over Zuckerberg's face. So what better time than to kind of hijack the narrative, all the while kind of, okay, Facebook's over here, guys. You don't mind what I'm doing over here. Here's Meta. Here's Meta. Like, pay no attention to this the scam and the high take rate, 100% take rates, and emotion contagion experiments from 2012, and manipulation of your feeds and all this kind of shit, because it's going to be
Mm,
really fun in the future. Um,
mm.
so we have to be careful. I see a lot of things about controlling the meme narrative, which meme is just, it's kind of a scary thing. I'm still, that's as an older gentleman, slightly more refined. Uh, I'm trying to wrap my brain around the whole meme culture, and essentially it's kind of, it speaks volumes. These little tiny meme things speak volume about exactly what's happening, and it resonates with people. And so we have to fight the meme culture, um, and promote in certain ways. There's a different type of warfare happening. It's a little bit of meme warfare, and we have to take over the narrative, because we believe that we are the righteous, we are the benevolent, and we want change, we deserve change, and we demand change. But it's not going to be easy, just because there's a blockchain and NFTs are going berserk right now, and people are focused on DAOs, benevolent DAOs, and emboldening your communities and stuff. Doesn't mean that the big machine can't come in here and completely take over.
Yeah, and it sounds like from what you said, there's like two main things that are really preventing the wide proliferation of NFTs. There's obviously, corporations trying to co-opt the narrative, corporations like Meta. And there's also a lot of people who are raising concerns around the environmental impact, which I think I still need to do more work on. Might be justified, might not be. But yeah, there definitely is going to be a lot of work to be done. But I'm really excited to see you guys at the forefront of this. And since our time is coming up soon, I'd love to kind of end with just two fan questions here. So first is from a listener of the show who will be getting a drop of a Deathbat from me after the show. Now he says the concept of NFTs are still very nascent. So what advice do you have for up and coming musicians who are looking to also adopt NFTs into their music and brand? Any lessons learned from what you've guys done so far?
Yeah, the major thing is you have to be careful of scammers. I mean, the opposition is latching onto that. It's a scam. It's a scam. Well, it's not a scam, but like everything else, there are a lot of bad actors, and people are really focused on security right now, and maybe even insurance DAOs and stuff, which is something I've suggested. I haven't seen too much in that, but would love to bring all types of protection, but in a more decentralized sort of manner, where you're held accountable on the blockchain. Maybe people can participate, in your communities if you're doing insurance or whatever it might be. So number one is to be, you got to educate. We didn't have very many people at all before we released this kind of like hype video. Um, and it just shows all the things that you can say, hey, well, meet and greets for life, but when it shows us playing in front of 100,000 people and hanging in the backstage with a lot of fans that we've known forever, we're participating in all these different events, sign guitar giveaways and guitar lessons, hanging with the rest of my comrades and in their individual endeavors and stuff, but all under one umbrella. But you have the media to paint the picture. Super important. And the other part of that is the education. I did one of the most, I'll be out. You're supposed to own these things. I can't own it yet because it still mortifies me to even watch it. But I did this like 15 to 20 video tutorial on how to create a MetaMask, how to go to Coinbase, set up a Coinbase
I saw
account,
that.
how to transfer all this shit. And I mean, it's just me trying to memorize these, the exact terminology and how it's laid out, and verbatim, and man, just uncomfortable as fuck. But it was so necessary to do, because I want to be held accountable if something doesn't work. We are participating in our discords every day to every other day. Well, every day somebody's there, um, in the band helping, and every day, all day, are the most amazing members of this community helping each other to fill in the gaps. So you have to activate your community. You have to engage with your community. You have to educate your community, and you have to participate heavily with your community. But that's what Web3 is all about, and we enjoy that. So it wasn't, that part's easy. Doing those shitty fucking 20 videos that took 2 hours to get done. It's like fucking 10 minutes of content took me fucking 2 hours. Horrifying. That's a little bit of the hard part. But connecting with the fans, educating them, and then guiding them in their education of other people's, and them educating other people. And finally, when they got it, you just let them go, right? And they're just, it's a fully, self serving, not self serving, but you know what I mean. Like, it's an ecosystem that doesn't need so much of this. Yes, exactly. It doesn't need 100% curation, and we're very fortunate. We put in the time. We have an amazing fan base, and it's a self-sufficient ecosystem right now. And that's the first thing I think that you kind of need to do. And then the second part is that be educated yourself. Be able to go do an interview like that and an interview like this, and be able to have not only try to understand what is, but you have to know the content so well that you, number one, make it your own, and it becomes fun when you start to ideate on these things. But it has to be second nature. You have to know what the fuck you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to release JPEGs and you're going to be an asshole, and your fan base is going to get hacked, and they're going to give out their seed phrases, to people with links and stuff like that. And you don't want to be an asshole. So you have to educate yourself about stuff, and the environmental stuff. I'm happy to go into that too. That's a big concern. If you have time or whatever, we can do another one of these later, whatever you want to do. But that's very important, because you have to know. I had two amazing people, without going into the nuance of all this stuff. Jamie London and my boy Radu Paraday at Synyster. They're my top dogs. One runs my social media, and the other is the community leader. And I had them collaborate over the weekend on this huge environmental study, and how much energy is consumed by all these different blockchains. And it's just a compelling piece of content that they drafted up for me, super comprehensive. And that's where I'm at now. I just don't want any holes in the game. If there are true environmental issues, and they're progressing, and we have the wrong trajectory, then I'm not going to participate, But we all believe things are going in a benevolent direction, and I have things to kind of substantiate that stuff now, and I'm just beginning on the path for that. But to tie it all in, it's education. Don't be a part of a space that you're not willing to go neck deep and then well over your head in. And if you don't enjoy it, then it's not the space to be in. And so take your first 10 hours. It takes a long time to put your 10 hours in. And then decide if you're really in love with the space. And if it's not for you, then don't fake it. It's not for fakers. It's for truly passionate people, because it's a very important time it's a very formative time to create the landscape that we want to participate in the future. Otherwise, it will be hijacked. So anyway.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I've been doing this for 3-4 years, and I can barely keep up. But this is the time to really jump into it and help build the future, because this is the most formative time, as you said. And the last question, Sin, is from myself. When are we going to get a remastered Pinkly Smooth album?
Man, after my own heart. I'm working on it. There's one last thing that I have to do. There's things floating around in the proverbial ether and the real deal. And I'm doing my best to dig and dig and dig, because basically what I want to do, I want to recover the masters. I think my Pinkly Smooth audience knows that I've been fighting to find, locate, and acquire the masters. And if you can do that, that means you can remix the whole project, because it was never really mixed. It was just kind of released, and it suffered great amounts of degradation over the years of copying and all these different things, starting on analog tape to cassette tapes to then transfer digitally to CDs. I come from the days where I grew up listening to cassette tapes and then CDs when I was a young adult. So yeah, you suffer a lot of degradation when you're transferring content that way. So if I get a hold of the masters, we can clean up from a foundational aspect, polish those things up, get rid of any unwanted noise. But the last resort would be to remaster. And what mastering is taking the whole file or each song, and you don't have control of the guitars, the individual guitars, the individual vocals, drums, all this. That you don't have control over that. Can't get in there. But what you can do is EQ, get rid of some of the noise from some of that. But the levels never get brought up. EQs can get brought up and maybe bring out a voice more. But there's only so much you can do with today's technology. So that's kind of a last resort. But and long story long, I apologize. All my answers are comprehensive. Uh,
Nope.
I just want the audience to know I'm working very diligently on this, but I don't want to just phone in a remaster. But if I do, I will continue the search for the masters. So maybe by the end of 2022, well, I've already promised the Sullivan family, Jimmy's parents, that I will either remaster or I might have even said it's by the end of this year. Then we got into the whole NFT. So apologies if that was the case, but it will be my priority for 2022 to figure out some sort of path for Pinkley Smooth.
Yeah, and I'm super excited for that. And maybe you can drop that as an NFT as well.
I love that. I love that. I'm totally down. Totally down.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time for this, and this has been incredible. I learned a ton from an insider's point of view about what it takes to really do NFTs and music correctly. So thank you so much for this.
I really appreciate the time and the fanship and connecting. I had no clue. We should have connected a long time ago. But thank you so much for reaching out, and thanks to your audience for checking the whole project out and giving me the time of day.